Another day, another recap. Today, we'll be diving into an action mystery thriller movie titled The Guest. So buckle up and get your popcorn ready and enjoy the recap. The movie kicks off introducing us to the Peterson family. We start off with Luke, followed by his dad Spencer and his mother Laura. Once they leave, she reminisces over a photo of a young man. The doorbell rings and she opens it to meet David there. He claims to be a friend of her dead son and explains how he served together with him. After inviting him in, she gets her guests some water and the two proceed to have some small talk. He then enlightens his host that he was just discharged due to his injuries and immediately headed there. He informs her he was with her son when he died and one of his last wishes was to look over his family for him and to tell them each that he loved them up until the end. Laura excuses herself and begins weeping until she returns and notices David in a photo with her son. As he goes to leave, Laura offers him to stay instead as she wants to hear more about her son. Soon enough, Laura's daughter Anna comes out of her room and is confused to hear her mother's laughter. David then introduces himself to her and why he is at their house. However, Anna isn't too accepting and really doesn't want anyone over. But as she leaves, Laura once again offers her old son's room to David for the night. He thanks her and gets settled into his room. At school that day, Luke goes about his day but is met by a group of bullies who mock him. Once school is finished, his mother takes him to meet his deceased brother's friend. David explains to him that he was dearly loved by his brother. The dad Spencer is skeptical about David staying the night due to possible PTSD. David then questions Luke's black eye and dismisses it as nothing. Later, Anna speaks to her friend Zeke and mentions that her house guest is a living, breathing reminder of her dead brother. Luke is then seen explaining maths to David until Anna walks through the door. She once again doesn't pay attention to her guest and goes into her room. Later on, Spencer and David seem to be connecting with each other until David reveals his plan is to work yet has no home or job. Spencer is kind enough to spare him the room for a couple more nights. David thanks him for his hospitality and accepts his offer. The next day, to Luke's surprise, to see David picking him up. However, what seems to be a nice gesture turns ugly when Luke is asked to point out his bullies. After the bullies are discovered, David proceeds to follow them and is told they are going to a bar. But David insists on getting out of the car with Luke, too afraid to confront his bullies. He quickly changes his mind though and sits down with David. The waiter then approaches them, and David antagonizes the bullies by sending over some expensive cocktails. The bartender gets right to it, and soon enough the drinks arrive. The bullies immediately confront David and has the drink thrown in his face. David's instincts kick in and he instantly returns the favor. A fight breaks out, and as David knocks out one teenager, he quickly disables another. Luke, however, is caught up in the mess and whilst getting hit, David comes to the rescue and protects his friend's little brother. After getting Luke up, David threatens the bartender to not mention a word to the cops and leaves him a nice tip. After returning home, Laura sees her son's face and asks what happened. He ignores her and goes to his room, but David ensures her that he is teaching him some self-defense. Within minutes, Laura forces Anna to invite David along with her to a party and he gladly accepts. That night, the duo arrive at the planned party. After being invited in, Craig introduces himself to David. An abusive man then makes his way onto the scene and David teaches him a quick lesson and smashes the man's face into a portrait. Some while later, David has a sit-down with Craig. He explains to him that he's a soldier and asks for guns as he hears Craig's the man to go to. The duo then finishes up and make their way home. On the way, Anna finally opens up to her deceased brother's friend and is finally accepting of him. The next morning, as Anna makes her way to the kitchen, she spots David on his phone outside. Suspicious as he said earlier that he did not have a phone, Anna decides to give the army a call asking for any information about David. However, the data is classified and they are ordered to contact the KPG immediately. The woman is then informed to give them the official version, saying that David is dead. In a boardroom meeting at the KPG, Richard is about to speak when he is interrupted for an emergency. He is told of the situation and that Caleb's sister called looking for David's information. Richard immediately wants a flight booked there as well as a tactical team as he says the subject is still active, referring to David. We then see David arrive to meet the arms dealers and is asked to show the cash to see if he's good for it. As Craig starts going through the guns explaining one by one, David then showcases he knows how to handle a gun and pulls it apart whilst putting it back together. David claims to want all of the guns, and as Craig laughs, David uses the pistol he picked up from the arms dealer and knocks him only for the gun to not fire at Craig. He uses this time to run away, but David calmly reloads and from a distance fires a precision shot to end Craig's life. The next morning, Anna receives a call and instantly approaches her mother telling her she asked for information about David. Her drunken father interrupts them to talk about his friends mysteriously dying. David then appears and is invited by Spencer to spend time together. Simultaneously, Anna gets a call from Zeke telling her Craig was found dead and then gets pulled over before finishing his sentence. That night, Anna comforts her friend whilst Luke and David bond together whilst carving pumpkins. Anna reveals to her friend that David died a week ago and is confused about his identity. David in the meantime is seen telling Luke never to back down and advises him to take a knife to school. Anna proceeds to take a picture of David's burner phone but is interrupted by a phone call and runs away. David walks slowly into the room suspecting someone was going through his stuff. Zeke then calls Anna, telling her that the gun that killed Craig was found in his van and was tipped off by an anonymous person, leaving Anna quite distressed. Anna then walks out of her room to inform her family of both Craig's death and Zeke's arrest. Her dad isn't too surprised and calls Zeke a failure and loser. Anna then releases the information that the real David had died a week ago. David defends himself by saying he was a part of the special forces and civilians are all told that story. He even throws his dog tags to Spencer to prove his identity. Spencer is satisfied with this response and demands an apology from Anna. Instead of hearing her father's words, he swears at him before walking away in a rude manner. Spencer then apologizes on Anna's behalf to David, letting him know that she isn't in her right mind. To Anna's surprise, David enters her room and tries to comfort her about the situation and reminds her of the promise he made to her dead brother. In the meantime, Richard is seen on the phone asking for help from special forces and tactical teams. As Anna makes her way to drop Luke off at school, they discuss Craig's death, and Anna accuses David of being the killer and asks Luke to investigate a doctor who was stripped of his medical practice as well as the connection between him and David. Whilst in the classroom researching about the doctor his sister told him about, he is sworn at by a bully sitting behind him, and they end up in a scuffle which leads to Luke smashing a wooden stick, injuring the man. David and Laura immediately arrive at the school, and David asks about the situation and is proud when told he smashed a stick over his bully's face. David then suggests to Laura to allow him to talk with the principal. As the principal says Luke must be suspended, David uses his intellectual rules and regulations to outsmart him, which leads Luke to only after-school detention as punishment. Luke, sitting anxiously, sees David come out smiling and tells him he only got after-school detention and is pleased. In the hallway, we see Luke and David talking about Anna's accusations towards Craig and admits to him that he knows he is not the real David Collins, and tells him he still accepts him for who he is despite being a killer. David's body language quickly takes a turn until Luke reassures him they are friends, even if the rumors are true. But before anything else, David asks Luke who else has Anna told, only for him to mention her friend Chrissy. The next morning, David and Laura are seen hanging clothes as she thanks and appreciates everything he has done for the family. As David leaves Laura, she is stunned when she turns around to see multiple police vehicles. Out steps armed men who immediately question her on the whereabouts of Anna and the man she made a call about, David Collins. Richard asks Laura when's the last time her and David had seen each other, but as the wind blows the clothes out of the way, David pulls out his pistol and swiftly takes out two agents. As the agents open fire, David ducks for cover and notices he's been shot and quickly wraps it up. As an agent tries to ambush him solo, David is quick to kill him. Ruthlessly, more bullets are unloaded into the house where two agents attempt to find his whereabouts. However, from under the bed he shoots them both with ease. Forced to move positions, David is spotted by the many other men attempting to execute him, so he crawls through the hallway, evading the bullets flying into the home. David flees to the kitchen and is met by Laura's presence, only to notice he has been struck again. As Laura hyperventilates, David apologizes for not being truthful and is finally asked if he even knew Caleb. Laura, not believing his story, screams for help, which results in her being stabbed to death. With no sympathy, David hijacks a car and point-blank shoots another target before deflating their tires. However, Richard continues the pursuit, but to David's surprise, unbeknownst to Spencer driving home, they collide into each other. David proceeds to jump out of the vehicle, and with no regard for human life ends Spencer's then and there before taking off on foot. After the chaos, Richard is seen in the diner talking to Anna, telling her she needs to leave now, and that her assumptions about David were right. Fortunately for her, David arrives soon later and questions her friend Chrissy, who seems to be hesitant. He quickly runs out of patience and just shoots her in the middle of the diner, and as he makes his way out, he rolls two grenades through the diner, killing any witnesses left. Richard is then seen driving with Anna, who looks terrified. He then proceeds to tell her that David was a subject in an experiment who killed 7 people and is the definition of a psychopath. Anna tries calling Luke to warn him, but when Luke tries to answer the phone, he gets it confiscated by the teacher. She is then informed of the deaths of her parents and is in distress, crying whilst being told by Richard that if David feels like anyone suspects his real identity, he exterminates them, and does not have the capacity to stop. The two soon arrive at the school looking for Luke, but are met with a strange Halloween-themed maze. As they make their way through the hallways, they hear a voice giving them directions to Luke's location. Finally, Anna and Luke reunite, but strangely enough the power goes out and Anna's music starts playing. They make their way to the DJ booth with the teacher, but he comes around the corner and drops dead. Richard screams at the siblings to flee and heads forward in search of David, but the soldier is one step ahead and stabs him. Richard attempts to fight with every fiber to get away, but is stood over by the subject he has created. Anna and Luke are then seen running back into the maze attempting to escape. While Anna tries to protect Luke, she tells him that their parents died at the hands of David and is not to be trusted. David then approaches and psychotically antagonizes Luke to come out and that he won't hurt him. As he gets closer and closer, Anna makes a noise from a distance and he goes to look for her instead. However, with his evil smile, he discovers Richard's gun missing. He sees bloody footprints and follows the path only for Anna to come from behind and bravely shoot him. As she goes to see his corpse, David stabs her in the leg, causing the gun to go off and start a fire. He starts to choke her and tells her to give it up. Out of the blue, Luke appears, saving his sister by stabbing David. David gets up to see the once scared boy turned killer, only to be stabbed again. In his dying moments, he gives Luke a thumbs up, indicating he'd done the right thing, finally standing up for himself. All emergency services then make their way onto the scene where Luke and Anna sit in the back of an ambulance comforting each other. As the story comes to an end, a fireman comes out limping, only for Anna to realize this is no fireman, and locks eyes with the killer, realizing her story is not over just yet. Thanks for staying until the end. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.